Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Nishant, and welcome to another episode of the Nishant Garg Show. The mission of the show is to spread awareness on mindfulness practices, psychology, mental health, and spirituality. My job on the show is to invite world class performers to share their practices to live a fulfilled life. And today's guest is Kristen. Kristen is a certified mindfulness fundamentals with Mindfulness Schools. She has written more than 100 freelance writing stories for places like Huffington Post, Your Tango, Pop Sugar, West Jet Magazine, and Food Network. She became a regular contributor to the Gottman Institute. She has won awards like Best Blogger, Women of the Year, 40 Under 40, and Emerging Leader. She started a non-profit Do Good Date Night that inspired hundreds of people to volunteer. She has appeared on affiliates for Fox, NBC, and the Weather Network. Now let the episode begin. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. I would like to have this conversation very funny and inspirational. And along those same notes, I would love to ask you, how would your family describe what you do for a living?
Oh, wow. Well, my kids are 9 and 11. And I don't think most kids really grasp what their parents do for a living, but I think that they would probably tell you that I am a mindfulness teacher and that I really just try to inspire people to live more awake. And I think my husband would probably say something really similar.
You teach people how to be awake.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people are sleeping?
Yeah. And I teach myself how to be awake every day. Yeah, I do. I think that sleepwalking is kind of our default in just this human experience. I think that our brain is designed for sleepwalking because if we had to be alert and if we had to just make constant decisions, we would just be exhausted by the end of the day. And so our brain really defaults into automation. It prefers automation. And so when we're automated, we don't have to think things through. Like I don't have to make a decision to brush my teeth every morning. I don't have to look at my phone map to figure out how to get to the grocery store. I don't have to email the school every day to find out what time my kids need to be there. Like I remember things, I repeat things, I create habits. And most of our life is like that. But because of that, we live in this default kind of automation mode where we don't really have to be present for our life. We can just kind of go through the motions. You know what I mean?
Yes, of course. Do you have any experience from your life when you were running an automation and it did not lead to the life that you wanted?
Yeah. I mean, I experience it every day. And I teach this and I spend an hour every morning doing meditation and journaling and reading really soulful books, all in an attempt to become a more conscious person, to become a more awake person. But of course, I fall asleep all the time. I find that in this current crisis that we're all dealing with COVID-19, it's really easy to fall back asleep. You know, I might see something on the news and just start to feel really angry or really fearful and you know just speak in a very angry and fearful way and lose my awareness of how doing that makes other people around me feel angry and fearful and when I'm asleep, that's what I do. I read things on the news and they make me upset. And when I'm awake, well, the first thing is I don't look at the news. I'm very mindfully and deliberately stay away from it. Or if I do, I go to information sites like the World Health Organization or the CDC. But if I do see something, I'm mindful about whether I share it and how I share it. And just mindful about what we create when we talk about what we talk about. So yeah, sometimes I'm awake to that and sometimes I'm asleep to that. Sometimes I'm swimming above the water and sometimes I get pulled under.
And when you say sleep, I want to clarify for the listeners that this is an analogy. It doesn't mean that you are sleeping. it's like, your brain, your body is running on automation, and
Yeah.
you're not able to take conscious decision. And
Yes.
when you're mentioning that having those practices in the morning, it means that you are able to expand your thinking and break your automatic patterns to think differently in a better way.
That's it. That's perfectly said.
And when did you realize that you are living a sleeping life,
Hmm.
so to speak?
Well, I think that I've been really fascinated by the study of the human species for probably about 20 years now. But I don't think it really became clear to me why until about 4 years ago, when I really just started to have this sense of like, I'm just not in my life. Like it's just so automated. I'm so not present and I'm so not conscious and I'm not being deliberate and intentional. And it was kind of a jarring moment in my life. I remember waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and just having this sense of dread, like I was wasting my life, that I'd already lived, I don't know what it was, 30-ish years by then. And I really wasn't living. And so that's when I started that morning practice. And now, because the kids don't have to be at school, I don't get up until 6. But for years, I'd get up at 5 and I would have my meditation. And as I said, I would journal and I would read. And that really is what changed things for me. That was a fork in the road for me.
And when did you start incorporating morning routines?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think now. It was probably in 2017. So yeah.
What changes or what transformations have you observed in your life just through the morning routines?
Hmm. Well, I guess one of the first things is the time that I spend in the morning contemplating my life, like the living of my life, gives me a chance to just have some perspective. So maybe I'm noticing that I'm just feeling unhappy, or I'm noticing that I'm just feeling really stressed out. And that time that I have in the morning to have introspection, I can ask myself, what is going on? And I can actually like have an answer. And I might see, wow, I totally overcommitted myself. I've got way too many things on the calendar. I have way too many projects on the go. And that's making me feel overwhelmed and edgy. And I'm just not being nice to my people in my house. And so I think that's the first part, just having space to just notice how you feel about your life and notice what you're doing with your life. I think that that's the first part. And then I think the second part is the meditation or the stillness, whatever that looks like to, whatever people gravitate to. But the idea that I can practice like an exercise, like I would go to the gym, placing my attention on a specific point of focus, that I can actually take my thoughts and my mind and very gently and with a sense of friendliness, place it where I want it to go. And that might be on my breath, it might be on a mantra or a anchoring sound. But the exercise of that, like the actual honing of that skill that happens on the meditation cushion, stays with me all day long, because when I can be the noticer of my mind on my meditation cushion, and I really get intentional about doing that every day, then that skill stays with me, 8 hours later when someone ticks me off, or someone is late, or I'm late, or I can't find something, or whatever would normally kind of spin me out. When I have the skill and I can access the skill of being able to choose what I give my thoughts and my energy to, it puts me in the driver's seat of my life. So that's really those are the main things that I kind of focus on. And I read in my morning practice too. So just spending time reading books about either Buddhism or meditation or just conscious living or minimalism or gratitude. I mean, I read a ton, and I kind of sponge good thoughts when I start my day, inspiring thoughts about being kinder and more compassionate and more generous. So it really just kind of sets me on a path to just have a good day and be a good version of me. And not like good, like I'm not a bad person or a good person, but it's like the best version of me gets to come out because I've kind of conjured her up first thing in the morning, you know?
And morning routine is not something to fix yourself or to fix any broken part of yourself. It is to raise your consciousness. I love that, what you just mentioned. And how much time do you spend in your morning routines?
It's about an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah. I love that you said that it's not about fixing yourself, because I think for the longest time that was the spirit that I took to it, that like if I could just spend more time, you know, almost like a Michelangelo sculpture, like just buffing and fixing and making better, then, you know, then I could finally be perfect. And I definitely can see that anybody who starts a spiritual practice, whether it's mindfulness or religion, that if they have tendencies towards perfectionism, that will follow them right into their spiritual practice. Like just because it's meditation doesn't mean we're inoculated against perfectionism. But I think over time, you know, staying at it and just broadening my awareness and just noticing how my practice makes me feel, you know, just starting to kind of massage those parts of me out, you know, like it takes time and it certainly comes back. But I think that's really important what you said, that it's not a fixing, it's a, I don't know what word I would use. What word would you use?
For me, it changes. The terminology changes from time to time. Sometimes I may use consciousness, sometimes, you know, just to be with myself. And, you know, having some sort of self-love, you know, spending time, creating healthy relationship with myself. Because everything starts from us. It's not the act of selfish. This is self-enlightenment. This is, I think, more and more on this. And I would love to ask you that if you miss your morning routines at any time, then does it impact you in any way, or you are just as normal as you already are?
Yeah, I missed it yesterday, actually, for the first time in a long time. And I had been up really late the night before on a Zoom call with a bunch of girlfriends. And I also knew that it was supposed to rain in the morning, so I wasn't going to be able to go for my morning walk. And so I thought, oh, I'm just going to stay in bed. And I just felt off the rest of the day, you know, like not lost, but just a little less rooted, a little less centered than the way that I normally feel. So I can only imagine if I stopped for weeks, I would just lack so much navigation. I would just feel so ungrounded. Is that a word? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, a lot of sense, because you have developed this morning routine over a period of time. And I totally relate with that. If we miss a day or two, or maybe 3 days or 4 days, it's fine. Nothing is going to happen. We can get back to our normal habit of morning routines, or any habit that we have developed. I would say good habit, not a bad habit.
Yeah.
So, but if we keep doing the same thing or missing our routines or habits for a long period of time, then we get back to our normal, automatic, old routines. And it happens with me. And if I started running, I you know, for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, I did it for 6 months. And when I stopped doing it, it becomes zero. You have to start from scratch. So this is how our brain works.
Yeah. We really are wired for habit. Like this idea that our brain is designed for automation, like that's not like me offering up some sort of wacky theory. Like all anybody has to do is remember the last time they drove somewhere, and when they got there realized that they're not really sure how they got there, you know, like somewhere they drive all the time. And that sense of like, wow, I wasn't really present for that drive. I was safe, obviously, but I think we've all had that experience of just being so totally on autopilot. And so it's just something we all do. It's no one escapes it. It's literally how the brain is designed. It would be so overwhelming if the brain had to be 100% on alert all the time. We would use up all of our brain power probably by like 9 o'clock in the morning. That's why
Exactly.
you hear about these people who really rely on their brains for creativity, like Steve Jobs and Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. They wear the same thing every day because they know that there's something called decision fatigue that's real, that we actually get to a point in our day where our brain is just tired of deciding and thinking. And so they try to avoid as many decisions as they can and as much thinking as they possibly can around the minutia of their life, what they're going to eat for breakfast, what sort of workout they're going to do, what they're going to wear. And by doing that, they free up that brain space to do the creative work that, has made them millionaires.
Yes. And creative thinking requires a lot of energy. And that is when we have all these good habits in the morning, we can, and coming back to the autopilot mechanism, we can avoid spending energy on the things that are not very critical, and we can save those energies for our creative thinking and power. And and because driving a car, when we are driving and we can text, we should not, but we do, we call people because our mind is used to a driving car.
Yeah.
It's on autopilot. So it's like we can do two cognitive things at the same time. Our brain cannot work like that.
Yeah.
So like we can walk and talk. Brain is used to of that, but we cannot do multiple things cognitively at the same time.
Yeah. 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 It's why it's really interesting to me when I share with people that they aren't actually experiencing their life, that what they're experiencing is their thoughts and feelings about their life. And when their eyes kind of open wide, what am I talking about? I ask them to go to a time where they were just really at peace and maybe in awe and wonder. Maybe they went and saw the Grand Canyon, or they were on a beautiful beach, or had just done an amazing mountain hike and they were overlooking Machu Picchu or something like that. And those moments stand out as being so transformative and profound and just these extraordinary moments. And the reason why is because we're not automated in those moments. We drop so completely and deeply into the present moment because our brain can't even do anything but say, wow. But that's not how we live most of the time. And so to me, one of the best access points of mindfulness, or just waking up or just being more conscious, is being able to just stop for a minute and just be like, wow, my elbow, like, wow, my fingernail. Like, we can't just have deeply conscious moments after we've spent thousands of dollars to fly to Arizona. Like, that would be such a shame, because most of us may never see the Grand Canyon, and if we do, maybe we'll just go once, and then the whole other million days of our life is just sort of mediocre. But we can bring that deeply present awe and wonder and wow into the everyday living of our lives just by dropping so deeply into the present moment.
Is there any other practice or any spiritual practice that comes to your mind to bring more present reality in our daily life?
Yeah, I mean, the breath is like incredibly helpful for dropping us into the present moment. And there's many ways that we can use it. We can just simply follow the breath in and out. We can really tune into it, either the way it passes through our lips, or if we're using our nose, the way that it feels going in and out of our nose. Maybe it's the way that it feels inside of our body, or maybe the way that our body feels as it moves on the outside. People put their hands on their stomach and belly breathing. There's counting breaths. In Zen meditation, it's counting the in breath, counting the out breath 1, counting the in breath, counting the out breath 2. There's box breathing, where it's you breathe in for a count, maybe 4, hold for a count, out for a count, hold for a count. So like the breath is this very helpful tool.
Very helpful.
And it's always there.
And recently I learned that our out breath should be longer than in breath. So there are many patterns. For instance, one of the patterns that I've been doing on myself is 3-7-8. So
Mm.
you inhale for 3 seconds on a count of 1, 2, 3, and then you hold your breath for 7 seconds on a count of 1 to 7. 3 inhale, 7 second hold, and 8 exhale.
I love that. That's really great because the brain has to really concentrate because those are three different numbers. It's like when they say when you're trying to fall asleep, don't like count backwards in twos, like count backwards in sevens, because then you really have to think like, okay, 293, you know what I mean? Like it's difficult. So I really like that, Nishant, because it's going to have to force my brain to concentrate on the task at hand, which is great. Then it puts its focus on something, which is what I want. I love that.
I think I remember where I learned this from. So my friend, and she has a company, Sleep is a Skill. And so she was interviewing somebody from Stanford. This came from somebody, and he's a Stanford professor. So there is a science behind it.
It's great. I'm going to totally steal it. I'm going to borrow it. I'm going to use it. I love it.
And I would love to ask you that you read so many books, and
Yes.
I also enjoy reading so many books. And how do you retain the material? How do you take some notes, or how do you track the action items?
You know what? I'm actually so glad you asked me this question, because I was just talking to my husband about it the other day, and he was saying that he's a coach. He's a consultant. He works with people from all over the country and helps them with their businesses and their mindset. And he was sort of complaining that he wishes after he read something that he could recall it faster. Like he notices that it's really helpful to say to someone, well, I learned this in a book, or maybe this book would be helpful. And he knows that I'm very good at that. And so he was like, how is it that you're so good at that? And I reminded him that I don't just read a book. So I'll run through my process really quick with you, Nishant, because it's thorough.
I'm so interested.
First thing is I finish the book within a week. And the reason why I do that is because then I am fully entrenched in that book. It's almost like you could take a course over a couple of months, or you could do like the accelerated course and just do nothing but that course for a week.
Like a crash course.
Yes. So I'm very hyper focused. I'm like swimming in the content of that book for that entire week. The second thing I do is I'm an active reader. So I'm underlining, I'm circling, I'm making notes, I'm putting little stars and exclamation points, sometimes little hearts and things like that. So I'm physically with my book. I don't read on e-readers. I listen to audiobooks sometimes, but oftentimes I'll also have the hardcover book. But when I'm reading to really learn something, I typically will have the physical book, almost always will have the physical book. So I'm actively reading. I have this book in my hands. I'm underlining. Then when I'm done the book, I take everything that I've underlined. I read through all the underlines again, and I write them in my journal. So I have.
Do you write it?
Yes.
Physically, or you have any map? Okay.
Yes, I don't type it. I actually write it, which is, studies have shown that you'll have a much stronger chance of retaining because of the amount of time it takes to actually physically write with your hands and the muscle memory. There's something that happens around memory when you actually write. And then I typically will talk about the book with someone, maybe my husband, and sometimes I'll write a thank you note to the author. I'll write a little review on my website about the book. I have a link of all my book recommendations, and I'll write. So I really I go deep with my books. I go deep with my reading much more than I think the average person does. And I think that's why I retain so much.
So you spend about a week on reading that book, kind of a skimming through the book and, putting underlines everywhere. And after that, your second step is to take all those underlines and underscores onto your journal so that you can review that later on. How much time that step number 2 takes for you?
I don't know, maybe an hour, maybe an hour and a half.
Okay, that's not bad. So when you read in that week, so do you just read one book at a time, or you are in the middle of many books?
Lately what I've been doing is I have more like a spiritual book that I'm reading in the morning. And then I have kind of the book that I'm kind of powering through, and I'll pick that up throughout the day. And then I usually have a fiction book that I read at night, because by the time I go to bed, I'm pretty tired. Yeah, and I go to bed early, like 9:15. But I get into bed and I read a chapter or two of my fiction book, and then I'm out. And then I'm up by like 5:45. I do it all over again.
This is my favorite topic to talk about, all the routines and habits. So when you go to bed at 9:15, are you very strict about it, or it is flexible depending on the time and day?
Well, I don't actually feel like I have to be strict about it, because I want to be there. There's nowhere else I want to be. So it's not like I'm like, oh, I want to watch one more show. Like, there's really nothing I watch. So I'm usually powered off my phone an hour before, so there's nothing I want to do on that. And I try to, my kids go to bed at the same time as me. They'll stay up and read a little later, but it's a parent tip, for one day, Nishant, when you go down that road, is it is a lot easier to get your kids to go to bed when they're not thinking you're doing something fun after they've gone to bed. When my kids know that I'm just going to bed too, there's never any fight about going to bed.
My goal in life is to go to bed by 9:30. I try to go to bed by 11, because I have experienced that feeling when you wake up at 3:30, at 4 o'clock. There is this different feeling, and I can't express that. But the thing is consistency. I'm not consistent in my sleeping patterns, and there is a science, actually, sleep science. When you go to bed at the same time, around the same time, you will wake up around the same time without any timer.
Yeah.
And you hit all the cycles of your sleep, REM, different cycles. You operate in a much, much better way. And I commend you for that, being very consistent, going to bed around 9:15. And when do you switch off your mind? What time do you switch off your mind before go to bed?
Oh, wow. I guess right around that time, like when I pick up that fiction book, and I really, I really don't have a lot on my mind before I fall asleep at night. Like, my day feels complete. I got everything done that I wanted to get done. And if I didn't, then I'm okay with that. And yeah, I don't really have a lot to think about when I'm about to fall asleep. And maybe it partly is because my brain knows that it's going to have this time, when I get up 8 hours later. Like, my brain knows it can trust that there's time for us to be together, to hang out. And so it doesn't wake me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, pestering me with something. It doesn't bother me, because we have this agreement, and I've had this habit for so long.
Good habits.
I'm reading this book right now called How to Meditate by Pema Chodron. And the subtitle is called A Practical Guide to Making Friends with Your Mind. And I love that, because just in saying that to you, like, my mind and I, we've made a deal that it doesn't ever need to be anxious. Like, I'll get to it. I'm here for you. We can solve these problems together, but we're friends. I don't fight with my mind anymore. We really are friends.
Do you ever get to listen people that, or they would say that they don't need all these routines, they are already happy in their life, or they are fine, they don't need all this structured routines?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people who can really find a steady, centered, contented place without a lot of routine. I have a tremendous amount of routine. I'm very scheduled. I time block, right down to the 30 minutes at times, to the point that I have friends that would say that I have no spontaneity. But what I'd say is that for maybe what I lack in spontaneity, I gain in just feeling so grounded all the time, just feeling so tethered. Like, I'm in control, I'm intentional, I know what I'm going to do today, and I know why it matters. And so, not saying that someone who isn't scheduled doesn't feel like that. Maybe they feel very grounded, but I know that when I'm not scheduled, when I'm off my routine, when I'm not clear about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, then I do feel anxious. I can get tremendously anxious, and I don't want to feel like that. Like, my goal is to feel good. We should all feel good. And if a schedule is going to aid you in that, great. If a schedule is going to make you feel not good, then don't have a schedule, but feel good.
Feel
Find out
good.
what
Do
feels good.
whatever you want to do, but do
Yeah,
something.
totally.
And there is a saying, I can't remember who said that. When you have discipline in your life, you create more freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it was either Stephen Covey or Wayne Dyer. Either Wayne Dyer was talking about Stephen Covey or it was the other way around, but I've heard that too. He was talking about
I
a
don't think
piano.
Wayne Dyer, because I've been following Wayne Dyer like religiously for the last 3 years.
Must have been him. Was he telling the story of learning to play the piano?
I'm not sure. Can you please explain that?
Well, he talked about how it took discipline to learn to play the piano, but now he has the freedom to play the piano. Like it was such a shift in, it might take discipline to learn to speak Spanish, but then you have the freedom to travel all through the Spanish world and be able to speak to people. So yeah, I'm with you.
I think sometimes people can confuse discipline with not being flexible. I think we get to be flexible. It's good to have structured routines, but if something happens, we get to be flexible. We get to be spontaneous. But if the whole schedule is spontaneous, you can't achieve, or I don't want to generalize, but it's difficult to achieve the things that matter. Then you get to be minimalistic,
Yeah. Yeah.
doing the things that matter.
Well, and when we're tuning in and we're noticing how we feel, we can see when discipline is using us versus using it. Like if I feel very confined and inflexible and almost like I've got a prison guard, like telling me what to do all day, then I might look at my schedule and think, ooh, this isn't working for me. This isn't providing any benefit. It's making me feel bad.
And
So
I'm having this question in my mind right now. When you have all those routines, but you don't feel like it, you feel that your mind is distracted. Does it happen to you ever?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Then how do you deal with that?
Well, I don't know that I necessarily deal with it. Our mind is going to wander. We're going to get distracted. We're going to get stressed out. I catch it sometimes. I don't catch it other times. And I'm just try to be as compassionate as I can toward myself during those times.
And if
I'm having,
yeah, please go ahead.
And if I'm having a hard time being compassionate, I'll share that. I'll share that with my husband or with a close friend that I'm, struggling and having a hard time being compassionate about it. The struggle is never the problem. Life's going to be what it is. It's how I feel about the struggle. Do I resist the struggle? Do I surrender to the struggle? Do I get frustrated about the struggle? It's like, it's life is just going to be life. I'm going to have whatever day I'm going to have. But if I can just be with the isness of whatever I'm experiencing without trying to cling to it or to push it away, then I can find a much steadier, more peaceful place.
And this is very powerful thing you just mentioned, that it's okay to feel that it and not beating yourself for not accomplishing things every day. It's okay to not be productive. Nobody can be super productive every single minute, every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And is there any correlation between these morning and night routines with the happiness?
Yeah, I think that I have a real sensitivity to happiness. And what I mean by that is that I don't like not feeling good. So if I'm feeling flustered or frustrated, I notice very quickly. And it's not that I think, oh my gosh, I have to be happy all the time. I don't. There's been many times in the last couple of weeks where I've allowed myself to just feel very, very sad and cry. And I've had an enormous amount of access to my tears. So it's not that I want to be happy all the time, but I want to feel like I'm choosing, like I want to actually feel like I'm participating in my life and how I'm feeling and what I'm choosing, including my interpretation of what's happening around me. I want to be aware of the story and the narrative I'm telling about what's happening around me. So to me, it's less about making sure that I'm happy all the time and more about just making sure I'm participating.
And what is happiness for you? How do you define happiness?
I would say that it is having the capacity to actually experience the living of my life, whatever that might be, whether I'm eating an ice cream cone or just waking up in the morning or having a shower or going out for a beautiful dinner or being on a walk or just playing Uno with my kids or having a snuggle with my husband, like in all those things, I could be asleep to all of them. I could be on total automation mode thinking about something else. And sometimes I do. Sometimes I miss it. I probably miss a lot of moments. But to me, happiness is when I fall into a moment and have one of those like, wow, this hug is awesome. Wow, this pillow is so great. You know?
Are you saying that happiness lies in small things?
I think happiness lies in whatever you put your attention on. Happiness could be $1 million bottle of champagne as long as you're actually drinking it, like with your full intention. If that is what is going to make you happy, then go for it. But how many people might drink $1 million champagne and
Does it exist?
guzzle it? I don't know. I've never had it. But it's like, it doesn't matter what it is. You know, it's just that you're there for it.
And we can connect this $1 million champagne to being present. You know, our mind keeps wandering. And happiness from Eastern philosophy, Thich Nhat Hanh or Dalai Lama, they mention that there is no way to happiness because we already have it. We are trying to acquire happiness, something outside of us, when we already have it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can be aware of this happiness thing that is already inside of us, and we just need to remove those past conditioning, those old beliefs, those are not serving us, then we can tap into that happiness. And it's a process. It takes time. Some days you are just super happy, or I would say you're thrilled. I remind myself personally that if something great happens, I tell myself that I'm excited, I'm thrilled, I'm feeling awesome. I'm already happy because it's already exists within me. But if I get something from this thing, then I'm thrilled, I'm excited. It's not getting something out of, or getting something in life is not making me happy. It is giving me excitement and thrill.
Yeah. I mean, happiness isn't something we get or somewhere we're trying to be. It really is just a state. It's a state that we attune to.
Yes. And I would love to ask you this funny question. So when you wake up, what is the first social media app you check in the morning?
Well, I don't look at my phone until
when you check your phone.
Much later. But the first app I use actually is my Insight Timer app, because it is my timer that I use for my meditation. But I can check that. I'm on that in airplane mode. It doesn't actually connect to the internet. So
like no Instagram, no LinkedIn, no Facebook.
But I would check, that would, if once I'm ready to like enter the world again, probably Instagram would be the first one I would check. Yeah, I really like Instagram.
Why Instagram?
I think it's because it's mostly opinion-less. Like it's
really,
it's not like, what I find is if it is opinions, it's more like invitations than like, I hate blah blah, and you can't really share news stories on Instagram. It's mostly just beauty. I think that's what it is. I think most people who really understand how Instagram is meant to be used are just sharing beauty and love and living. And I like that. You drop into these little moments with people, with their babies and their husbands and themselves, their yoga, I like it. I think that it's just a sweeter, quainter social media, in my opinion. That's just my experience of it.
Love it. And before I ask you my last question, I would like to ask you, do you have any advice for our dear listeners so that they can become a better version of themselves, apart from what we have discussed so far?
Yeah, gosh, that's such an individual question. I think that the first thing I would say to someone is sit down and ask that question of yourself. What do I need to do to be the best version of myself? And ask like you actually know the answer. Like, Like there's a deep, wise knowing inside of you that would actually know the answer, because there really is. And that is where the answer for me came. I didn't read a book that said you should get up early and spend all this time. I mean, of course I'd read that before, but that on that particular day, it did not come from a book or from a speaker that I had been to or a coach. It literally came from this deep inner knowing that said, you have got to start making time every day to be with your inner world, to start thinking about your life. And so that's what I would say. Ask. Maybe I need to go for a walk. Maybe I need to be in nature. Maybe I need to see a therapist. Maybe I need to start meditating. Maybe I just need to sit still. Maybe I need to do that 10 times a day. I don't know what the answer is, but I think if someone sits long enough with that question and is patient enough to see what the answer is, they'll get one.
You just have to ask and you'll be given.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and where can people find you online?
Yeah, they can go to 60mindfulminutes.com, and I got episodes of my podcast on there and my blog, and I have a free course on there where people can learn how to do their morning centering practice. It's like a 5-day audio course. So that's always a great thing for people to listen to as they're trying to figure out the how and the why and the where and the when of starting out their day more mindfully. So yeah, they can go check that out.
Well, thank you so much, Kristen. It's amazing to talk to you about all these happiness routines and fun-filled inspiration.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been so great speaking with you too. It's just a beautiful way to end my week, and just to have beautiful, heartfelt, soulful conversation with you. It just feels like we're soulmates.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this podcast episode today. I hope you learned from this episode that you can apply in your life. If you did enjoy this, please subscribe to the podcast, The Nishant Garg Show, on Apple Podcast. You can also subscribe to the show through my website, https://nishantgarg.me, NISHANTGARG.me. You can also share this podcast with your family and friends or whoever want to feel fulfilled. And thank you so much again.